Welcome.
Welcome.
Housewives of True Crime, Monday edition. And today I have a super special guest, Alexis Frost, who, by the way, has been on the podcast before.
Yes, I have.
Way back in 2020. 2020. Yes. Okay. So listen, I met Alexis a long time ago through the podcast. And then I actually got to meet her flesh and blood at CrimeCon after so many years of being friends with you.
I know. It was a long time.
I know. And now she is a guest host on the podcast, which is super special. Okay. So Alexis, I want you to tell people about you, but the fun fact is that today is the first day of summer for me. We're recording on my kid's first day of summer.
Lucky.
And I know you're in California, so you guys still have like days
January 4th,
left.
my kids get out. June 4th. Yeah.
Yeah, June 4th. So you have a little bit more time. But okay, so Lexus used to be a teacher. So I only can imagine what you thought the first day of summer, like every single year.
Oh my gosh, the best day of my life. Except for if I was teaching summer school, but yeah.
Yes. Okay, so tell us about you.
Well, I'm a full-time food content creator. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat now. That one's a scary one. I'm trying to be a Snapchatter, but I feel like it's for people that are way younger than me, but we don't need to talk about that. I was a high school math teacher for 15 years before I started content creation, and I stopped teaching in 2022. I'm married and I have 2 kids, 13 and 16. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so when she says she's a food content person, she is an amazing food contenter. And actually, one time I was like, hey, my kid, so she goes through drive-thrus, orders crazy stuff. And one time, remember, I was like, my son yeah, you ordered my son's order.
Yeah, and that video did really good, I feel like.
Did it?
Yeah, it was
You should do
McDonald's
more.
order, right?
Yeah, it was McDonald's. And I even have even crazier things now because 2 of my kids have celiac and the other one is just the pickiest eater on the planet. So I have gotten real creative with every single drive-through that I can think of.
I love the weird ones. And some people really like those too because it gives them ideas if they have, dietary restrictions.
Yeah.
They're like,
you never know what you could do.
But like I can eat it because, of my diet.
Yes. And so you should also go follow Alexis. And also Alexis and I have in common that we have teenagers in the house, which is totally a Snapchat type of thing. So they could teach you how to do your stuff.
I need to. But one of my teenagers, I don't allow him to have it anymore because he's cuckoo crazy. And the other one, she's kind of like an introvert. So I feel like she wouldn't be very helpful with it. I'm literally just like learning as I go, or I try to watch TikToks. Okay, I feel like that's such an older person thing to do. How to do Snapchat.
I haven't even gotten there yet. Actually, I'm on Snapchat only so that I can follow my daughter and make sure that she's,
smart.
Being respectful, which she is. I don't think she does that much, but then all of her friends have followed me. And supposedly when they snap you a picture, etiquette of Snapchat is you reply immediately with a picture. Did you know this?
I didn't know this.
So you can't leave somebody
on red.
You can leave them unread, but as soon as you open it, you have to immediately send something back. You can't just open it and have it open. I don't know. It's a thing.
It seems absurd. I feel like it's 2 different things. It's 2 different users, right? It's like there's a Snapchat for content creators, and that's like what people are consuming. And then there's a Snapchat for like recreational use. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I definitely am not using it for that part, the recreational. But for content creators, it's different. It's like almost you have to like upload videos and do a certain amount of stories each day. I mean, you can monetize. It's like a whole thing.
So it's the same thing now as TikTok, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And they just started I think few months ago where they want you to make longer form videos. So now you can post on Spotlight 1 minute long videos. I've seen podcasters on there. I follow a couple of podcasters on there.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
and you
I
can
am
monetize on there now too.
great. You just added one more thing to my plate
Sorry.
that I'm going to be doing.
Sorry.
But maybe I can get in early and actually do something
Yeah,
with it.
that's what I've really been trying to do, just trying it out. We'll see how it goes.
What's your favorite video that you ever made?
That I ever made? That's hard. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like the most memorable, like any video of ever is like just the whole like string of videos that I did with Chipotle when I had like the menu item with it. I got to work with Keith Lee before he became like crazy famous, and just that whole experience. It was just such a cool experience that it came from just like me making my own video about an employee suggestion to, you know, Keith Lee trying it, to it becoming an actual menu item, and Chipotle flying us places, and me being on DoorDash. And it was just like the coolest experience. Literally changed my entire life, my whole content.
Yeah.
Like, it just switched everything. So I'd have to say definitely that. And I love Chipotle.
Oh.
Isn't it so good? It's crazy.
It is the best. And because I have celiac children, it is unless you get the tortilla, it's all gluten-free. And so it's the
My kids
best
love
place
it.
to
They're
take.
picky too. Well, my son loves it, and he's pretty picky. But his bowl is weird still. It's like rice, beans, cheese, and chicken, which, okay. But he eats it at least. My kids are very picky.
Yeah, mine are very picky, and they all love Chipotle. So we are there probably, I don't even want to say, but we're probably there
I'm
3
there
times a week.
A lot too.
Yeah. Me and you, we sponsored. Okay, so are you ready to get into the case for today? I think you're not gonna like it, but we'll talk about the ending after, because it has one of these endings that is questionable. Okay, I am taking you to Brewster, Minnesota. Have you ever heard of this place?
I have not.
You probably haven't, because there is only a population of 500 people.
Oh my gosh.
It's tiny in the southwestern part of the state, and it's just like a stone's throw away from the Iowa border. So it's this small, quaint little, like, you probably would blink if you were on the highway going by. It has maybe a couple churches, one gas station, and a real cute little main street, and a whole lot of cornfields. This town is a quiet, small, close-knit, as safe can be. I mean, no one locked their doors, at least until this case unfolded. If you want to move to Brewster, you might need a little luck, because there is nothing for sale. When I looked on Zillow, there's 2 listings. One's for about $300,000. The other one is just over $100,000. So, I mean, with a population of 500, I don't know how many people are really moving anyways. It's quirky, charming, and rarely, if ever, has gotten to national headlines. The biggest excitement in this town is the Friday night football game at the local high school. In August 2015, when a local woman was killed in her own bed, well, this made national news, and it absolutely rocked Brewster, Minnesota. One report put it that Jan's death shook the entire community. People couldn't believe something so horrific could happen in their sleepy little town. So after that, many started locking their doors from that night forward. Okay. Before we dive into what happened that fateful night, let me tell you about the people in this story. They are Chris and Jan. These two were small town sweethearts with big dreams. Chris and Jan Cruz. They were, by all accounts, a solid American couple. If you saw them around town, you'd think they were adorable, with an adorable little family, living the small town dream. And let's start with Chris first. Chris was Chris Cruz, which is like the perfect name, if you ask me. He grew up just down the road in Worthington, Minnesota, where It's like only 9 miles from Brewster. It's a bit bigger with 13,000 people, but still not that big. And he didn't move far. He's kind of a hometown boy. He learned carpentry from his dad and became a pretty skilled woodworker. By his 20s, Chris had opened his own woodworking shop, and it was just outside of Brewster. Chris's neighbors knew him as the go-to guy if they needed help regarding anything like fence, renovations, building a porch, building a treehouse for your kids. He was that guy. And he even volunteered for the community to help out with these projects. A Globe article even noted that he helped with local home repairs when folks around town just didn't have the money to do it. So he had a reputation of a hardworking, helpful family guy. Then there was Jeanette, who went by Jan. Her maiden name was Pigman. Well, she was a bright, energetic woman who would become Chris's wife. Jan grew up also in Worthington, in that smallish town 9 miles away. Her parents were Terry and Mary, which also sounds just perfect together in my opinion. And her sisters too, Kay, and they all lived, within a 10-mile radius of each other. Jan was known for her big smile and even bigger heart. Her mom would say that she was always smiling and really enthusiastic about life. And so what do we call those people, Alexis?
Optimistic.
We do call them optimistic, that's for sure. I'm like, I want to be more like Jan. I want to be like that optimistic person all the time. I feel like my job's put me in the non-optimistic line of thinking, but I'd like to also call her a disco biscuit. Yeah. Like you. You might be the first disco biscuit of all disco biscuits that I knew. Yeah. From the podcast. So she was also, which I actually strive to be this person, but this last year I wasn't very good at it. Like, she strived to not ever forget anybody's birthday.
Oh my gosh. It's too hard to do.
It's so hard to do. I mean, it's really hard to do.
And I forget. The calendar only shows some people on the iPhone. Have you noticed that? Only some of your contacts have the birthdays. So then I'm like, no wonder why I forget. Because why isn't the calendar telling?
And you know what? If you type in, say it's their kid's birthday, and you type in happy birthday to your, Joe or whatever, it saves it as their birthday on my calendar. And then now I'm like so confused because it's like Karen's birthday is, January 3rd. And then it's like when I text her, no, that's actually John's birthday, my son. I'm like, damn it. I knew it was somebody's birthday in your family. Or my phone knew. It reminded me of the wrong birthday. Jan also is known for the person that brings in what they call in Minnesota is hot dishes to your door if you were sick. And you know what a hot dish is in Minnesotian? What we would call it a casserole. She just seems, we would be friends with her, Alexis. I'm pretty sure.
Love that.
Jan and Chris met in the early 90s when they were just out of high school. They dated a couple years and then tied the knot in 1995. Jan was I think she was about 20 years old, which is pretty young to get married, in my opinion.
Same.
Yeah, but I think that happens up there in Minnesota in a small town. It's not uncommon to get married that young. Chris and Jan were a good match. Chris, the handyman, he got the skills, and Jan had the brains for business. She would handle all their finances and paperwork, and Chris would do all the actual labor type work. Over the next 2 decades, Chris and Jan built a really nice life together in Brewster. And literally, Chris built their house. I know, it's crazy, but I love that. Actually, I think it would make it so special if you actually. Yeah.
I feel like my husband would love to be able to do that, but I mean, he obviously can't, but I just feel like he would just be like, okay, this is literally my house.
I know.
I built it with my bare hands.
So that's special. They had kids. They had 2 kids, a son, Isaac, and a daughter, Bailey. And by 2015, Isaac was like 19. He was grown up-ish, living outside of the house in South Dakota. And then Bailey, she was 15. So we can, both you and I can have similarities there. In 2015, she was 15. She was going to high school, doing the typical teenager things like Snapchatting. And what we will learn, but her parents didn't really know, is she was secretly seeing a boyfriend that her parents did not approve of. Chris was a devoted dad, and he coached Isaac's baseball team and helped with Bailey. And Jan, she was the mom of the house. Life for this family wasn't all work and no play. They loved the outdoors, and they loved their summer vacations at a lake called Spider Lake. Have you heard of that?
No, thanks.
Me neither. I know. I think, yeah, it gives me actually the creeps too. I'm like, I don't know. Although there's a lake here in Texas called Possum Kingdom, and it's an amazing lake, but it also...
I feel like that's a cute name.
Possum.
Yeah, it's just cute.
Baby possums are cute, but I don't think big possums are cute.
No.
But baby ones are cute. But Spider Lake, yeah. But they loved Spider Lake. That was like their jam. They vacationed at the Spider Lake Resort, and there were like cabins. It was beautiful. It has like pine trees everywhere. It has this little resort with docks, fishing boats. Like, it's a vibe. And the Cruises didn't just love vacationing there. They actually fell in love with this place. They thought about owning this lakeside resort for years and years. It was actually their dream. They talked about one day, possibly if it ever went up for sale, that they would buy it. Chris would handle all the maintenance and the fixing the cabins and maintaining the boats. And Jan was like, I'll be the manager, and I'll do all the numbers and the books and whatnot. And this was just kind of their someday let's make this happen plan. And that someday dream, by mid 2015, after years of thinking about this, the resort went up for sale. And they were like, we are gonna go for this. So they scraped together an offer and put in a bid for this resort. You can imagine how exciting but stressful it was. Buying a big resort is probably big price. I can only imagine. Yeah. And when their offer went through, when their first offer unfortunately fell short, that was a big blow to them. So in August of 2015, both Jan and Chris came home from Brewster pretty disappointed that they did not get the deal. Their bid wasn't accepted, but Chris was not giving it up. Unbeknownst to Jan, at least initially, Chris was so keen on this resort that he had to make a second offer a few days later. This time he upped his bid by $150,000.
Where did that money come from?
Well, we don't really know where that money came from, but let me just tell you that Jan held a $150,000 life insurance policy, which could just be a coincidence, but it also could be a calculated move on what happens next, but I don't know. And maybe this is getting ahead of myself, but we might not ever know. So Chris was desperately trying to secure these funds to make this dream come true. So here we have a family. Chris, a helpful handyman, loving father. Jan, the caring mother, savvy sweetheart. We've got Isaac away, and Bailey living at home, navigating high school, and they have big plans to open this resort, or to, continue on with this resort. On the surface, the Cruises seemed really happy. Jan's own mother said that the two, they got along really well and they didn't fight. They had, some tension, some money stress, and yeah, sure, This resort could have caused some arguments, but feels like normal couple stuff.
Right.
Late August 18th, 2015, it seemed like any other typical summer night. We don't know exactly what they did that evening. What we do know is that by 2 a.m., everyone was still in bed. Chris and Jan were asleep in their primary bedroom. Bailey, 15, was asleep in her basement bedroom, and the house was really quiet and dark. Around 2:30 a.m., a sudden explosive noise shattered their stillness. Chris Cruz later told the police that he woke up to this really loud in his bedroom. He was very groggy, confused, and saw his wife suddenly sit up straight in bed and say, "Oh my God." And then almost instantly, Jan collapsed over and Chris was just in shock. Initially, he said he hadn't seen anything. He just heard a boom, saw Jan in distress. He leapt out of bed, and according to his account, he fumbled to turn on the lights and realized that Jan had been shot and blood was on her and she was not responsive. In a panic, he helped Jan lie back down in bed. His mind must have been racing that it was an intruder. He thought about Bailey, his daughter, went to check on her, then called 911 at 2:39 a.m. Chris dialed 911 and he was frantic.
911 emergency.
Somebody just shot my wife.
Someone shot your wife? Who shot?
Yes. I don't know. We were sleeping. I heard a bang, got up, he was shot.
Okay.
The back door is wide open.
So you can hear, he says somebody broke into his house, shot his wife while they were sleeping in bed. He told the dispatcher that he woke up to a blast and now his wife is hurt. He also mentioned that the back door was wide open. And so this to him was like, well, the intruder fled out the back door. You can hear in his voice that he's in shock.
Okay, fine. I'm giving him a side eye right now, but
I know. I am giving a side eye too. He's crying and he's emotional and he's, what the hell happened? What is this? What is the matter with people? He says he stood in the doorway and my bedroom and my wife was shot and I just don't understand. According to Chris, he believed that an unknown man literally came into their bedroom doorway, fired at Jan, and then vanished. While on the phone with 911, Chris said he ran downstairs to check on Bailey. And I mean, I can imagine that is like a rush even to Bailey. Bailey was okay. She actually was scared out of her mind because she heard what happened, but she was physically unharmed. Then he says he, went upstairs to wait for help. Well, Bailey's account of what happened was a little bit different. So she was in the basement and she actually wears hearing aids. And so her and her dad have some sort of hearing impairment. So they both wear hearing aids, but she did say, and she doesn't usually wear them to bed, obviously, but she did tell investigators that she distinctly heard 2 gunshots that night, not just one. And she described being jolted away by 2 loud cracks, like back to back, and a brief pause long enough to, she says, pump a shotgun between them. So it seemed like she kind of heard that, right? And she then recalled hearing her dad upstairs yelling and cussing in shock, and then thought she heard her mom moan one time. She was terrified, unsure what to do, so she grabbed her phone and texted her mom, actually. And she texted her mom, question mark, what is happening? And obviously she didn't get a reply, which is so sad.
so sad. Oh my
And
gosh.
it breaks my heart, actually, like really.
I can't even imagine.
No, I can't imagine either. And this is where, like, you don't know what, I don't know what I would do. What if, and she's a teenager. She said she just froze in bed and didn't do anything until her dad came in, burst into her room.
Yeah.
And I don't know what she should have done. Hide, maybe?
I don't know. You know, it's so funny that this is part of this story because I was just thinking about, I know, I'm sorry, this is probably getting you off track, but all that new Dateline episode about the Idaho 4 and like what they did when they like saw him and how they sat in the house for so long and didn't call for help. I feel like maybe you really just get in so much shock. Like you just can't, you literally don't know what to do, to the point where you even, you know, I said one of them walked by the doorway and saw their roommate like laying there dead, but I just thought she was drunk. And so they didn't do anything until, you know, later on the next day. So it's
really, it's so crazy to me.
You just, I guess you really don't know.
You don't know. I think you really don't know what you would do until you're in that situation.
Right.
There's also times where we can, as like even us here podcasting, kind of just put it into everybody's mind because you never know. Like everybody thinks, oh, this is never going to happen to me. But sometimes it does. Even like this weekend, my daughter's going away with a friend to Lake. And I just was like, hey, do not get on a jet ski with somebody that's been drinking. If you see them drinking, you don't go. And it's almost like you don't want to have to say stuff like that, or you think that it's just going to be in their brain. But I think it's not. So I think if you just keep talking about things that you should do, maybe if you're ever in a situation where, you know, like I think she probably, I don't know what happened here, but I probably would say probably hide in your closet, something like that.
Absolutely. So the person can't find you. Oh my gosh.
Scary. She said, I didn't really know if I should get out of bed or just stay. So I kind of just stayed. I texted my mom like question marks because I didn't really know what I was supposed to do. Well, first responders arrived within minutes and the EMTs arrived and they found Jan in bed, unresponsive. She had a big wound to her chest and there was nothing to do. It was too late. The medical examiner later determined that Jan had been struck by a 12-gauge shotgun blast that entered in her right shoulder chest area and exited through her back. The injury was so catastrophic that even if life-saving measures were given to her right away, like CPR, it wouldn't have helped. She probably only lived about 3 to 5 minutes after being shot. Jan was 40 years old, mother of 2, and she had passed. During searching the scene, officers did notice something puzzling. There were 2 spent shotgun shells on the floor. One shot had hit Jan, but the other shot had apparently missed. Investigators traced the path of that second shot, and it had pierced the wooden headboard right where the couple's head would have been laying. So, and then it like lodged into the wall behind it. So it seemed that the shooter's first shot was aimed at their heads and then missed, going through the headboard and the wall. And then the second shot actually hit Jan when she sat up. So this raises eyebrows because if Chris was sleeping right next to Jan and he was truly asleep, how did the shotgun blast tear through the headboard at pillow height and not actually hit him?
Right.
It was a miracle, I guess. Police also on the scene just were thinking that this story was not adding up. You know, their alleged intruder, deputies like secured the scene. They were looking for evidence of a break-in. Chris pointed out that this back door was found left open and it was still open. They did find in the basement that the window of the basement had been broken out and shards of glass were on the floor and the window was wide open. So on the surface, it kind of looked like maybe somebody climbed through that basement window and then did this horrible crime and then went out the back door. But those clues also weren't lining up so neatly because it had rained the night before and there was mud all outside the basement window, but there were no muddy footprints anywhere, like not on their floor, carpet, nothing. And outside the window itself, there were no shoe prints or dirt or grass, drag marks, like anything that they would have seen a person walking to get up to that basement window. Deputies even brought in a canine to see if they could catch like a smell of an intruder or somebody other than anybody in the house, like all through their backyard near that window. And they did not pick up any kind of unknown scent around the house. So that's kind of a red flag also. Also inside, officers noted that there was nothing stolen, nothing, no valuables, nothing missing in drawers, nothing was ransacked. The only damage was the broken window and Jan's fatal injury. So it was hard to believe that this was some random burglary gone wrong. Instead, it was looking like a staged crime scene. Investigators at the scene whispered among themselves, and they were growing suspicious that Chris could have staged this to look like an intruder attack. But that morning, as daylight broke over Brewster, Chris Cruz, he wasn't arrested. He was a distraught husband who lost his wife in this heinous attack, and deputies from this small town, they did not make it seem like he was, under any kind of surveillance. Jan's family, her sisters, her parents, they rushed to the house. They were in shock and grief, and they believed Chris when he said that somebody had come through the house. Well, who could possibly have wanted Jan dead? I mean, she was really loved. No one could fathom, anybody. However, the investigators did proceed with evidence, and they did started to shift a little bit. They didn't announce any suspects, but behind the scenes, they were looking into it very closely. They looked at the inconsistencies in Chris's story, the physical evidence, and let me tell you one inconsistency about Chris's account. Initially, in the chaos, Chris told the officers that Jan had been lying down, woken up with the bang, sat up in sleep, and then, he had set her back down. Well, that's not what happened. She was sitting up when the bullet hit her, the medical examiner said. And also, Chris did not have any blood on him. So he would have had blood even if he was just laying next to her. He would have had blood splatter on him, and he didn't have any blood splatter. You know what? The other thing, this is one thing I didn't even think about before, but they didn't test him for gunshot residue. They should have done that right away.
Absolutely. But I guess, maybe because it's like a small town and they were just taking his word for what it was.
I think that's why. That must have been why. He also didn't try any life-saving measures. I think I would have, no matter what, been trying to give CPR mouth to mouth something, or even just holding the person. I just can't imagine if that happened to my spouse. I wouldn't be all over them being like, wake up.
Don't die.
Hold on one second. My daughter, she's going to the lake for the weekend, like I told you.
The whole weekend?
Yes.
Oh my God.
This is it's nerve-wracking. I bring her friends all the time. She's 15.
Yeah. See, my 16-year-old, she doesn't like to do anything. She just draws and keeps to herself, just an angel. It's my 13-year-old. He acts like he's 21. He wants to be out, about, running. He scares me. That's why I get scared.
Yeah, she's a wild child. Mine is a wild child. Yeah. Yeah. So
she relates to my son.
They would do crazy things together, I'm sure. Okay. As they gathered more intel, another angle came up, and it was motive. Was there anyone who stood to gain from Jan's death? And like I told you, yes, Chris did with this life insurance policy. And it was the exact amount that he had put in the increase offer, which is a red flag.
What is he doing?
I don't know. I mean, I think to police this, and to me, this was like the potential smoking gun motive for Chris, because Jan, remember, was the money person, and she probably was like, no, we can't afford anymore. And Chris was probably like, well, we can afford more if you're not here, or at least I can afford more. And it's a dark theory, and we'll, never know. They also looked at these family dynamics. Initially, Bailey had said her mom and dad got along fine, but under further questioning, there was some cracks, like this forbidden romance that Bailey had. Remember, they did not want her dating her boyfriend, who his name was Jeremy Maharis. He was a 19-year-old local guy, and I can kind of see why they did not approve. She was 15. I think that is like a little bit too big of a gap for me at that age. Yeah, not now. I mean, after you're like 20, that age gap is nothing.
Right, yeah. But 19 and 15, you don't have anything in common, I fear.
You might have one thing in common, but it's not something that they should be doing.
That's why your parents are concerned.
Yes. So they didn't like Jeremy's influence, and Bailey, like most teenagers, didn't exactly obey that rule. She actually kept seeing Jeremy. He would, in fact, sneak into the house many nights that summer to hang out with Bailey after her parents went to sleep. Now, when she also got word of the fact that they were going to move to Spider Lake in the middle of her high school career, Bailey was also not very happy about that. She did not want to leave her school and her friends, and so this did cause some arguments in their home. Bailey was really upset about this uprooting, and so she confided in Jeremy about all this, and Jeremy later testified that Bailey told him that her parents were fighting a lot about this resort. And she also said that they were also tossing around the big D word. And I'm not talking Dallas, Alexis. I'm talking divorce. So if that's all true, it does indicate that behind closed doors, maybe Chris and Jan's marriage was on a strain. But then you got Jeremy sneaking into the house, going into the Cruze's home without anybody noticing, and then also knowing about this like drama that his girlfriend might be gone. I mean, that's also a red flag to me. So police knew that they couldn't ignore him. So they had to think, does he have a hand in Jan's death? Well, here's something that did happen that night. At 2:48, just after the shooting, Bailey, in her panic, texted Jeremy. Jeremy, who lived 20 miles away in South Dakota, got in his car and rushed towards the Brewster's house. By the time he got near the house, he saw all the emergency lights and the cops were everywhere, and he basically freaked out, did a U-turn, and went back home without talking to anybody. That doesn't look good to me. Seems odd. And he lied about it. When he first was questioned, he lied to the police actually 3 times, denying that he went to the house that night. He eventually did come clean about this drive-by, but only after Bailey's text alarmed him. So I don't know. Jeremy's father also did give him an alibi, saying that Jeremy was at home watching TV at that time, which I'm like, how do you know? It's 2:48 in the morning.
Are you up watching him?
Like, you wouldn't be up watching your kid do that. Listen, I think my daughter stays up late, but
same.
But you're not up watching her watch TV, are you?
No, absolutely not. Who knows what they're doing up there?
Yeah. So, but at the end of the day, the police believed him, and they said he was just a scared boyfriend in over his head, and they ruled Jeremy out as a suspect. So they came back to Chris, though. And so in the weeks and months after Jan's death, the case, it stalled a little bit. There were no arrests made from actually 2015 through 2018, so a long time. At this time, Jan's murder was just considered unsolved. And then the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and the sheriff's office quietly kept working on this case. And because, by the way, this is a small town and the community was on edge. Like, they were really scared that there was a crazy person on the streets gonna just bust into their house and shoot somebody in their sleep. So that's scary. So they still had their eye on Chris, right? But everybody was like, even his family, even her family were like, there is no way that it was Chris. He was just a sad husband. Well, the circumstantial evidence was adding up. These inconsistent statements, don't fare well for anybody. The staged break-in, the financial motive. And then there was which I was thinking, like, where's the murder weapon?
Right.
Like, where would this be? And so actually several months after the shooting, officers discovered a 12-gauge shotgun in Chris's woodworking shop. Now, this woodworking shop wasn't at the house. It was actually 1 minute drive. Like, it was very close, but not at the house. So he would have had to leave and take this gun there. Mm-hmm. And ballistic testing of this gun would later suggest that it was the weapon that fired the fatal shot. But interestingly, though, the firearm expert, when initially given this gun, wasn't 100% sure. So they had sent it again to analyze this gun, and then it came back, yes, it is the gun. Well, Chris's defense team would later note that the first time there was like a hesitation on this gun, right? So, and he would have had to also race over to drop the gun before coming back. So this kind of like timeline maybe doesn't work out so well. But in March 2019, 3.5 years after Jan's death, the grand jury did decide that there was enough evidence to charge Chris Cruz for the murder of his wife. So they arrested him in April of 2019, and this was huge news for the community. I mean, people were really stunned. Some people were Team Chris, and they could not think that this, that it was him. And then, of course, there were others that were like, obviously, it's the husband, Chris maintained his innocence. He pled not guilty, and he was released on bond. He got a real good defense attorney, which I think is a real good idea.
Yeah.
And he had his family supporting him, and he had Jan's family supporting him. So imagine that. The victim's parents are siding with the accused killer because they actually truly believe he didn't do it. And later, a juror would say that seeing Jan's family sitting with Chris every single day on his side made a real strong impression. It basically said if her own family doesn't think he did it, then maybe he didn't do it.
Oh, no.
The trial of Chris Cruz kicked off late in January 2020 in Worthington, Minnesota. And at this point had been 4.5 years since Jan's death. And emotions were high. Chris had been living like under this cloud, right? And Jan's family had long tried to find justice, whether it meant actually if Chris was guilty or finding the real killer. Chris faced life behind bars if he was convicted, and over about 3 weeks in the courtroom, witnesses came forward, evidence came forward, 8 days of testimony, 41 witnesses. It was that's pretty exhaustive. Prosecution was led by Noble County attorneys. They painted this case as Chris was the only person who could have really killed Jan. Although I still in my head have this weird feeling about the boyfriend. I think the most damning evidence that they had was this ballistic evidence about this shotgun from Chris's shop. But the problem is that the first time around, they said that they couldn't with 100% certainty say that it was his gun. But it is weird that he had the exact same gun. And later on, like another analysis would say that this is the exact same gun that shot her. So that to me, I do think is the most damning evidence besides the lying. I don't like the lying also.
Lying is weird. And I wonder, or I don't know if you have that information, but did they ask him like, okay, you said you only heard one shot, but if there was two shots, how did you not wake up after the first one and then, see the second one? Or do you know what I mean? Because he said there was only one and he woke up.
Yes, so that doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, at all.
You would wake up on that shot and you would be the one to be like, I mean, a bullet just flew by your head, basically, right?
Yes.
And then you would be like, oh my God, what happened? And then...
Yeah, and maybe see someone. Because...
Although, remember he has a hearing problem.
Oh, I guess that's true. But a gun is loud, yeah?
It is loud. I mean, a shotgun is really loud.
My husband is deaf in one ear, and for some reason we were having this conversation about the gunshots. Would you be able to hear this? Would you be able to hear that? And he's like, yeah, I absolutely would be able to hear that.
Yeah.
Even if I was sleeping on my
good ear,
I would still be able to hear.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about having the gun.
Yeah. Well, his defense team was pretty good. They, said there was zero direct evidence, no Chris pulling the trigger, no eyewitnesses, no confession, no fingerprints on these shotgun shells, which it's hard to pull fingerprints from shotgun shells. So I don't know. There was no blood or, like I told you, there was nothing really. It was all circumstantial. They also hammered on the timeline that could Chris really have staged the scene, shot his wife, took the gun to the shop, came back, called 911, all in a matter of minutes, which it is. They argued that it was implausible. I actually think it's possible, or maybe he put the gun somewhere else and then took it to his shop later. Well, at the end of the day, the jury deliberated for a very long time, actually, and his attorneys were saying that they thought that it was a good thing that the jurors were in there, wrestling with all this evidence and trying to figure out if Chris actually had done it. And then on February 13th, 2020, the verdict was announced as, what do you think?
I think it's going to be not guilty.
Not guilty on all accounts.
I knew it.
Chris Cruz broke down in tears as the clerk read out the words that he was acquitted of both first-degree premeditated murder and the lesser charge of second-degree murder. And in the eyes of the law, Chris walked out of that courtroom an innocent and free man. And so everybody was happy. Even Jan's family was happy. Obviously, the prosecution was disappointed in the verdict, and they still firmly believe that Chris was the one who intentionally shot Jan. But they said, we must accept the jury's verdict, and we do. And Chris walked free. And here's another fun fact, is that Chris, he was able to put something through the courts, and so he's gotten all of it expunged. After he was acquitted, he petitioned the court to have his record and his charges expunged, and Minnesota law allows for those acquitted. So the innocent verdict doesn't haunt them forever, which I actually kind of get that.
Yeah.
So if you search for any public records, they won't show. Now, he moved out of Brewster, which I think is probably a good idea. He moved to Worthington, which is not too far, which I think maybe he should have moved. Maybe this guy just needs to go somewhere else. I don't know.
For sure.
He tried to keep a low profile since 2020, which also is a good idea. But I'm sure there's people all the time there's that guy that, allegedly killed his wife, although he's a free man.
No.
Yeah. He still, to this day, claims his innocence.
It's so crazy to me how sometimes, in situations like this, we can all see it. Okay, this person did it, but then they get away with it. And then other times it's the opposite. I don't understand. I think it's maybe because they just liked him. They didn't see him as a bad person. So it's he's a good person, so there's no way he could have done this. Because sometimes I feel like they get convicted just because the jury doesn't like them. Just because they're not a good person doesn't necessarily mean they're a murderer. That just means you don't like them and they're not a good person,
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard. I mean, the whole thing with the boyfriend coming there and being awake, that also makes me like think twice.
Yeah,
He also has motive.
absolutely. And maybe that's what the jury was thinking too. It's just too much reasonable doubt.
Yeah, because you have to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there is somebody else, it's the same thing with this Karen Reed trial, right? Like if there's any kind of thought that it could be Brian Higgins, I mean, that's what that's what the defense is going with, right? It's like, or there's some tainted evidence from Michael Proctor,
Right.
which they are really like pushing on that now.
Yeah, you can't do it if you have any doubt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. Obviously, I get it, but it's just so, I was side-eyeing him from the very beginning.
I know. So that's the crazy case out of Brewster, Minnesota.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much for being here. Somebody had sent it in and asked, hey, have you heard this story? And I was like, oh, I haven't heard it. So let me look into it.
It's a very rare occasion that I haven't heard something because literally all I do is consume true crime podcasts. So this is the second story
you love them.
actually that I haven't heard, which I'm surprised.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us all where we can find you
Okay, so
now that there's so many places.
I know. It's sad. Okay, so you can find me on TikTok. I'm Alexis Frost on there. Instagram, I'm Lex Loves. Facebook, I'm Lex Loves as well. There is someone impersonating me on there as Alexis Foodie. That is not me. I know. And they have 94,000 followers.
Stop it.
And I report them every single day and nothing happens. My management has tried to do it, but because they have so much more followers, even more than my actual page, there's nothing I can do really. They can report me. If I keep doing it, they can report me and get my page like shut down because they have so many more followers. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I don't like that at all.
I hate it. Okay, and then I'm on Snapchat, same thing, Alexis Frost, and YouTube.
Okay. All right. Go follow her.
I'm everywhere.
She is such a fun person to follow. I love it so much. And I also like when you show what you wear.
Yeah.
I know.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh my God. You know, you guys have been one of my favorites for a very long time.
I know.
Since
You've
the very
always so
beginning.
supportive.
From the
Very beginning.
Even when
I know.
it was that other name. What was it?
Oh, yeah. It was Crime, Carpools, and Cocktails. Which is crazy that you found us then. We only had that name, I think, for maybe a month and a half.
Oh my gosh.
So nice. Thank you so much. All right. If you want more of me, you can head to patreon.com/Housewives of True Crime, or you can go to Clean Club on Apple, or follow us. If you listen on Spotify, it's Spotify Housewives of True Crime bonus content. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow us with the little follow button and give us a 5-star rating. We would very much appreciate it. And I think that's all for today. So clink.